Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
The call. So again, welcome to today's session, Evaluate the Health of Your Learning Organization. We have our presenters today, Peggy Durbin, Matt Donovan, and Chris Davis. And thank you again for joining us today. And let me start by introducing our presenters. So Peggy Durbin is a strategic learning consultant on the innovation research and development team at GP Strategies. For 30 years, Peggy has been involved in many aspects of performance consulting, conducting design thinking workshops, and developing learner experience playbooks and formulating measurement strategies. Matt Donovan is GP Strategies Chief Learning and Innovation Officer, bringing 25 years of crafting learner-centric solutions and leading high-impact teams. He has a background in instructional design and leads workshops, speaks at global events, and has won industry awards, including being named one of Training Magazine's top 10 international trainers under 40. And then we have Chris Davis, has over 25 years of experience in providing organizational effectiveness solutions to Fortune 500 companies, deploying complex business initiatives. His work focuses on helping clients connect strategy and execution to unleash the full potential of their organization while delivering high quality client services and helping deliver success for client strategies. We have a great session today. So with that, I want to hand it over to our presenters.
On mute. Matt, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Look at that. I've been all good on the mute thing. So anyway, I want to welcome everybody. It's great to be here with you all. Appreciate the opportunity to connect and share a little bit with you on our look at a strategy approach for a modern learning organization. What you see here is our core model as how we're starting to really look at the dimensions of a successful modern learning organization. There are 5 key components as we see it. And the first one, if you really look at it, is about identifying the strategy and the culture and making sure that they are really aligning with the overall learning experience that you need to have in place to drive the performance outcomes of the organization. You really want to then move from that to take a look at how you ensure that you have an operating model and structure. So how do you have that efficient, effective operating model that really allows you to not only measure, drive, pull the information forward, but it's driving it for the senior leaders and that business stakeholders to kind of drive that outcome for the business. And the next one we're looking at is around learning execution. It's making sure that you have the right products and services that are aligned with that. How are we making sure that for example, if you are trying to drive a strong collaborative community that requires a lot of collaborative learning with it, making sure that you have the tools, the platforms, not only that, but the capabilities and the team that's able to actually deliver that and those tools that are in place with that. The next one is really looking at the technology stack. And we talk about how all of these kind of come together, but the technology stack isn't just about assembling different pieces of tools or technology, but are they really aligning to drive the right learner experience and the outcomes for the business? And then the last one is really one of the core ones is really to measure, reflect, and evolve. So that it's not just a static snapshot of the organization, but it's continuing to evolve and adjust over time to meet as the business or competitive environment changes, making sure that the strategy as it changes as well to meet that, you're aligning with that. So it brings us to the next one, which I think is going to tee us up on a poll. So Chris, I think you're going to jump in and take us on that one.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we want to hear from you. Out of these 5 different areas, where does your L&D struggle the most? And it might be in each of these different areas, or it might just be 1 or 2. But yeah, we want to hear from you because we have some of our clients who, they may come into an organization and have no real familiarity with their learning organization because they're brand new. We have some CLOs who have said, look, I'm coming into an organization. It is very decentralized. I don't know the resources. I don't know the technology that we have across the organization. So actually, let's look at these. It's interesting as we look here at the results, we're really getting a pretty even result here across them. I would say measure, reflect, and evolve. That's the one that folks are struggling with the most. I don't know, anything, Chris or Matt, anything that kind of strikes you here with these results?
Well, I do think, I mean, it's interesting to see that measurement, and we know this because these are conversations we have with our clients all the time, that the learning function, the business wants measurement, but the learning function struggles to know where to get started or how to get started. So I'm not surprised to see that number there. The strategy and culture piece is, I'm a little surprised to see that that's standing out more than some of the others. Usually that's an area that we see organizations believe that they have that pretty well buttoned up and used as a guidepost for how they want their learning function to operate. The rest of them, you know, this is fairly consistent in what we see in the marketplace, and we see with our client base, that it's a pretty even spread between the other categories that we think about when we consider a really healthy and modern learning organization. So yeah, I'm sure
Interesting.
we'll get into more conversation about this as we progress.
Yeah, and you know, in these different areas, it's really how your learning organization is supporting the wider organization's goals, mission, and vision. And that's really, you know, where do you start in terms of trying to assess how you are doing? So, Chris, why don't you share an approach here?
Yeah, so, you know, Matt spent some time up front kind of talking through, and Peggy, if you could go back to the strategy, just go back one slide, talking through how, you know, how we think about the alignment and the connection in the categories that make up a learning organization, right? We really focus this on those categories that Matt addressed and the ones that we put in the poll. And when he talked about strategy, right, his overarching theme and the way we think about this is that a learning function that is a good modern learning function has a strategy that's up to date, and it's aligned to where the enterprise is going, and it really helps to set and define a learning culture within the organization, right? What that means is that the learning function doesn't just sit off on its own, building compliance learning, or, you know, kind of operating in a vacuum. What it means is that it's truly connected as a provider or a supplier to the business in terms of what the business needs. So when we dig deeper in how we think about strategy and culture, we look at it in these 4 dimensions or 5 dimensions that you see on the right here, around vision and purpose and mission, right? Does the learning function have their own stated and well embedded and articulated vision and purpose and mission for the organization that is connected to how the enterprise wants to go? Is this learning function making the commitments public to their enterprise that says, this is how we're going to serve you, this is what you can expect from us as part of the organization, this is how we support the employee value proposition that exists within the company, right? Is that stated? Is it clear? And are they committed to a culture of learning? A lot of organizations will say they are, but then do folks get access to a clear learning path, or a path that helps guide them in their career? Does the business make time for learning to happen within the organization, right? And is that driven and supported by the learning and development function? And do they operate sort of as a business unit themselves? Do they have a consistent way annually to plan for what they want to accomplish over the course of the next year? Do they understand the results that they're looking to drive and the outcomes that they are driving towards that are measurable? And do they have a consistent way to fund the initiatives, to fund the strategy, to fund the commitments that they have out there Or is this a learning function that's always scrapping for dollars, right? That has trouble getting buy-in from the business to fund what they need to do, that has trouble managing the budgets out there to support the programs that they have in place. So as we continue to go through this, you're going to see that each one of these categories has these unique dimensions that when we dive into them and when you look at a learning organization in the context of these dimensions, you're really going to get a sense of how connected everything is across the entire spectrum of performance. So from strategy and culture, we now move to looking at the operating model. And a modern learning organization should have an efficient and effective operating model that allows it to fulfill its strategy and mission, and it really drives that business impact for senior leaders and business stakeholders, right? This is the way that the learning function has process. It's the way that they execute their own work product that they have to do. It's the way that they stay aligned to the business, which is critical, right? Because if they're veering off and they're not understanding how the priorities that exist for the organization may change, not just year to year, but within a year, and they don't stay aligned to that, then they're really not supporting the business as a whole. Do they have a really strong L&D talent strategy, right? Oftentimes we think of the learning function as the cobbler's kids, really good at supporting the business, really good at supporting employees in the business in their own talent development, career development, not as good at looking internally and making sure that you have the right access to talent in the market. You know the capabilities that your function needs to be able to grow and deliver the strategic value to the business, right? And is that in place, and does that evolve over time as your capabilities need to evolve? Team structure. Do you organize the capabilities within your learning function that allows you to continue to maintain that alignment to the business and allows you to scale with the business? And it really doesn't, well, it does matter as to the type of operating model you're talking about, right? We could talk about a centralized model. We could talk about a decentralized or a federated model. But what we really look for in a modern learning organization is a structure that has scalability. And is it one that can scale efficiently to continue to support the business? And do you have clear operating processes, right? If the business or the learning function doesn't have a clear way to operate within each of the elements or the functions within their business, then things get disrupted. There's confusion. There's no accountability for who's doing what, right? So making sure that you understand the roles that sit within the function, that you've optimized the process between them, that decision-making is clear, who has what decision authority, who's responsible for what, all of this aligned so that it stays aligned to delivering and executing on the ultimate strategy. And then is there governance? Meaning, is it clear how to make all of this work and stay connected to the business? Is there a clear way to manage issue resolution when that comes up? Because undoubtedly it will come up. How do you handle priorities from the business as they're changing? Is the voice in the business that's the loudest, the one that gets the most attention? Or do you have a clear mechanism that aligns you to the business to say, here's how we're going to evaluate new priorities. Here's how we're going to put them into what we're going to tackle and execute in the year. And here's how we handle those changing priorities as we move throughout the year. So all of this together, when you think about strategy and being structured in a way and having the guidance that allows you to support that the learning and development function truly functions like one of the businesses that sits in the enterprise and stays connected with them and enables their own talent and capability and structure and process to do what you need to do to support the business.
Hey, Chris.
The next category.
Actually, before we move on, we do have a question from Aaliyah. And this a little bit earlier, you said they, and so the question is, when you mean they, did you mean the business? And I'm not sure at what point. So
Chances are I did, not knowing exactly at what point we're talking about, but yes, the they is here's the convention moving forward. They is the business, us or them is the L&D function. I'll try to adhere to that taxonomy as we move forward. But yes, in most cases, because we're talking about, does a modern learning function, we really, as we're working with clients and as we think about, whether that function is set up right and is set up to succeed with the business, the L&D function has to consider the business as their ultimate customer, the one that is the center and the focus of what they're doing, and everything around our own strategy and operating model is set up to support that.
thank you.
So the next piece here is, we call it learning execution. And as Matt articulated, right, a modern learning function should offer the right products and services that help make sure that talent within the organization has what they need to drive the business in that strategic direction. It's supportive of the strategic direction and the employee value proposition that is being stated for the business. And so that can mean a lot of things, and we've broken it up, or we think about it in terms of these three dimensions here. One is around the portfolio alignment and benchmarking, right? Does the learning function have the right portfolio to support the needs of the business? Do they have it aligned in a way that is clear about what the various audiences need in the business, and are the learning interventions and the topical matter supportive of that? For instance, if in a particular given year, right, maybe there's an enterprise strategy that talks about new market acquisition, and in order for that to be true, there has to be a very capable, aligned, and procedurally driven sales function and capability. If the portfolio doesn't have the right kind of solution to capability within the organization, that's a misalignment. And those are the kinds of conversations that come up during the strategy discussion on an annual basis, understanding the model and how we're going to bring it to bear, and then aligning the portfolio to ensure that it is developing those capabilities in the organization that are the biggest priority. The benchmarking piece says, are we doing it in a way that is aligned to best practices within the industry that allow us to, one, make sure we've got the right portfolio options available, but we also have the right way to design and deliver this? Are we creating the right modern design and delivery strategies that target what we need and deliver a modern learning experience, right? There are so many times when we talk with customers out there that we hear them say, we've got death by PowerPoint, or we've got death by Next, they call it, right? That asynchronous solution that is cost effective to deliver because it gets out to a lot of people, but it's not targeted as the best modality for whatever the learning content is. And that's just the mechanism that is used over and over. So a modern learning organization will take into account, from a learning execution perspective, making sure that they are bringing the right modality, a blended approach, something that delivers the right and modern and appropriate experience for learners when they're out there taking whatever the interventions are that are needed. So we talked about strategy, how that sets the roadmap. We've talked about the operating model and structure that gives that let's just say it gives the learning and development function the authority to think of themselves as a business. It empowers you to think of yourself as a business, to run it manage it, develop your talent, and operate. And then making sure from an execution perspective that you have the right solutions for your customers out in the business. The next piece really is around the technology. And we say that a modern learning organization has to have the right technology stack in order to offer that scale and efficiency that we talked about and to deliver that modern learning experience, right? Technology is just an enabler. We stand very firm on that point of view that technology is never the solution. It's an enabler. And in order for it to be a true enabler, the learning function has to make sure that their tech stack or their tech stack roadmap is aligned to grow and scale with where the business is going and the learning piece that you're putting forward for the organization, right? Does it reinforce the experience you're looking for? Does it give you that modern learning ecosystem that stays current, that provides that innovation? Does it also allow you and give you the chance to really dive into analytics and reporting? Can you look seamlessly across your ecosystem, pull in the necessary data that you need to talk about measurement within to ensure that the organization is achieving the goals that you're looking for, right? And do you have is it a static tech stack? Or is it one that's dynamic? Is it one, do you have innovation and governance methods in place that allow your function to continue to embrace a constantly improving approach to technology and how it can be done quickly with an agile mindset so that you and your function and organization can stay current and ahead of the wave on how you deliver those experiences out to the organization? And then do you have the right infrastructure and team in place that allows you to look at data at scale, that allows you to leverage the right capabilities that you need to manage the technology? And that can be in-house, it could be partnering with vendors and suppliers out there to bring that right in. But is this something that is an asset? Do you leverage technology as an asset to enable all those other things that we've talked about so far? The last area that we talk about, the last category, is around measuring, reflect, and ideate. And the important piece about that is that, a modern learning organization should measure the success not only compared to their organizational expectations that they have, but to what's happening in the industry and the benchmarks that sit out there, because that we know that the pace of business and the pace of learning and the pace of just work is changing so rapidly that if a learning organization doesn't have a good view into the effectiveness of what they're delivering, both in terms of the solutions to the business, as well as how they manage their own, they in this case is the learning function, how the learning function manages itself as a business. So dimensionally, what that means is there a standardized measurement strategy that is consistent and comprehensive across the organization? Does the organization speak the same language when it comes to measurement? Do you have the right resources dedicated that will enable you to connect and get the data and analyze the data in a way that is meaningful and timely for the business? Are you aligned with the business in terms of understanding the learning objectives, supporting the strategic goals of the initiative? And do you have a clear tie-in to the voice of the learner, right? Do you understand and have a view to where you're getting good feedback from the learners on not only the style and the experience, but the content and the effectiveness of it and the facilitators that you use, and use all of this as a way to make the improvements that you want? And then do you leverage measurement for operational effectiveness? Does the learning business effectively manage and run itself as a business, understanding the demand that's on them, understanding your own capacity, right? Tying this back to the operating model and structure, understanding the cost of what it takes to deliver solutions out to the business, and is it driving the impact that you're looking for? These are all things that when it comes to a learning function, being able, we like to call it measuring to prove and measuring to improve, right? Make sure that those experiences that you're putting together within the learning execution space, that the portfolio is driving the impact that the business needs, and where it's not, leveraging the technology to tie into all the data sources and the capability and the strategic approach that you use for measurement to understand where adjustments either need to be made in the solutions you're delivering, the way it's being delivered, or the experience that you're providing out to the organization. When we look at all 5 of these categories, one of the things that stands out very clearly is that in looking at a modern learning organization, those that are truly on the mature side of that, if you think of it in terms of a maturity model, recognize and understand the connected nature of each of these categories. You can't look at any one of these independently and not understand or have to dig into how operating model supports the ability to deliver that targeted portfolio to the solution, how technology enables you to truly get access to the data that you need to be able to measure and make those changes that you need, as well as deliver the modern learning experience out to your end customers, right? And that the strategy is what sets the stage for the whole thing. And is that something that's aligned to where the business wants to go and needs to go? And does the learning function use that as their annual roadmap to say, this is what we're going to do to make sure we're supporting the business? So it becomes this really interwoven or connected spider web, we like to call it, because every single piece of this is connected. Mm-hmm. And to ensure that you, when you look at it, understand where things are aligned and where things are misaligned to help make adjustments and changes to get your organization back on track.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And we had a statement by Laura in here in the chat saying that this is best case scenario. Our reality is that we are locked into certain technologies because of existing contracts, budget, etc. And the challenge is how to work around these issues. And you know, and I confirmed, Laura, yes, this is best case, right? We're painting a perfect picture in these 5 different categories because going through this process, and this is how we have guided our clients, you know, through this type of evaluation. It is taking that deep dive into those 5 different categories. And it's really a blend of the perception of how you gauge yourself as a learning organization in these different areas, but it's also the input that we get from your own stakeholders, your clients, internal clients as well. You know, we survey and we conduct focus groups to your business leaders, you know, your clients, I would say your stakeholders internally. We talk to and engage with your learners themselves, you know, the end user of your solutions, and then the learning organization itself. You know, we survey and we interview and conduct focus groups with those different audiences to get that clear picture of where you are as an L&D organization and where you have to go and develop. And it's really, this is kind of the output that we have here in these 5 different areas. You see the different dimensions that Chris stepped through, and it's that output of where you are currently and where you want to go as a learning organization. And, you know, we work with you to develop that clear action actionable roadmap for short term as well as long term to get you where you want to be as a learning organization. Matt, Chris, you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I
I'll
think,
give it an opportunity.
yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
jump in.
Okay. No,
Well,
you
I was going to say, I mean, I think what you're saying is spot on there, Peggy. It's thinking about a maturity model, and in effect, this is a little bit of a maturity model to say to kind of look at these dimensions and gauge where your organization may stack up against this. Maturity models can be good from an aspirational perspective, as you said, and someone made the comment in the chat that, hey, the reality is we have to live within the constraints of our budget. We have to live within the constraints of what the business is doing. We have to live within the constraints of the technology we have. And so recognizing that while maturity, reaching full maturity in every dimension would be fun and ideal, that's not necessarily appropriate for every organization. And so it's an important step to look across this and say, within our organization and based on what it is the business is looking for from us, these are where our priorities areas should be. And what can we do within our constraints to move the needle along? And maybe we're just really, we don't stay connected with the business throughout a year. We have a great planning process at the very beginning. We get a quarter into the year, all hell breaks loose, and we don't come back very well to connect with that. Okay, well, that's an area that you can work on within the constraints of the business that you have to say, we can get better at doing this, and here are best practice approaches to doing so. Wherever that lands, and the key in going through this sort of an evaluation process is figuring out what's appropriate for your particular organization, where you can make adjustments that will be meaningful, and then seeing if aspirationally there's an area to improve over a timeline that maybe you can begin planning for a little differently as you move through your budgeting cycles, evaluate your technology that's out there, and so on. So we all have to live within reality. There's no doubt about that. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of captured this. I think when we really started the journey on to kind of build this out, one of our elements is we wanted to avoid creating this concept of a maturity setting where it kind of is like this top pinnacle of maturity for an organization, and it has all these key features, and you're not as mature if you don't achieve this. And we really took it from a different perspective to look at where are you at within the conditions, the constraints, and the disruptions that you're facing to kind of say, do you have alignment with the strategy? Is it the right thing for your organization at the right level? Do you have the right tools or technologies in place to drive the strategy? Do you have the right tools, technology, processes, and people in place to drive the right experience? It's about being able to be within the space of where your organization needs to be, and that's the best fit possible. And it is different. While we say there are key criteria that are indicative of good, solid strategy, how it plays out is in the context of that unique organization and what they're doing. And I think it's a really important differentiator that we have when we look at this, because every organization has a different starting point. They have a different team, infrastructure, all that from where they're going towards. And they're also experiencing the disruptions that we're all facing in very different ways. So that's why this allows you to get a very quick view, a good insight into where the current organization is and where you'd like to be able to go to be aligned with the strategy as the strategy changes over time. And I will also say that, how to eat the elephant. Somebody mentioned a comment in there as well. I think that's a great example. And that was another feature of what we wanted to be able to do, is to start with something that is very doable. So with intentionality, this is something that you could do once a year. It's not going to take a long time to do. It's not going to cost millions of dollars and thousands of lives to get this thing done. The idea is to be able to do this and then, annually come back and kind of check the progression out that. How are you in the alignment? How are you progressing towards your aspirational goals? But it's a good first step to be able to start to eat that elephant, to get an idea. Now, you don't have to solve everything immediately. That's the other nice part about this. It gives you a systemic framework. So even as you were starting to improve or tinker with key areas of this, it gives you a consistent map for the entire organization to kind of look at that entire lens. So as it evolves over time, you have an infrastructure to kind of come back to. That's one of the things historically we've seen, is that learn L&D organizations would start on one piece or another piece, and they wouldn't account for their interconnections. And each year just seemed to be a series of disconnected initiatives, and they weren't really clear on how they were moving forward with meeting this. This gives you both a rapid, responsive approach to be able to get something out there fairly quickly, get some insights, be more data-driven, but also an overarching framework to kind of hang a 3 to 5 year strategy behind as well. So would love to hear from you guys. As you look at this, we have so many disruptions in the L&D space. Not only that, but also facing our business partners as well out there. I would just like to hear from you, to limber up those chat fingers, those texting fingers, and jump in the chat box and say, is there a challenge or disruption where you think responding to that this would be an effective or could be a useful tool to do? So what are some things out there that you're seeing, some changes, some evolutions, anything out there that you would see? I love that, Aaliyah. Thanks for sharing that. Strategy priorities not being communicated well, clearly. The ability to communicate and align consistently, that's a great one. Brandon asked us if we could go back to the strategy and culture slide for 30 seconds. Wanted to see some of the statements on those as well. We can definitely do that. While we're kind of going back and taking a look at that, would love to still hear from other folks, other things you're seeing. I'll throw one out there. One of the things that a lot of our partners are facing is the adoption of AI, how it's affecting the business, how it's affecting L&D, and the people, process, and teams, and the technology that we're bringing to the table. How is that? Is anybody else experiencing that kind of a disruption as well? I'd be surprised if somebody saying, no, we're not touched at all by it. So Leo was bold and shared the first one. I'd like to see a couple others. Come on and jump in there as well. Anything else you're seeing disruptions wise? John, thanks for jumping in there. So IT rolling out software with agile methodologies and training work to be predictive, and how it works with a hybrid approach. That's actually a great one, because when you think about software with agile methodology, this is not just a technology adoption or a process adoption. This is actually a change management effort that you're talking about. And that has, a cultural change, how you actually produce and create and get the adoption of software technology out there. And then how now you're going to do it when we collaborate, not just physically together, but now we're at distributed spaces, different locations at times. So there's a lot of change that's happening with that. So I think it's a great one. Hybrid definitely is an important one as well. And thanks, Russell. Appreciate the reach out as well. Love to see that, and definitely we will follow up with that. Anybody else have any others out there? So I know we were kind of cycling through, Brandon, as we're going through. Brandon, is this giving you some of the insights for the different sections? So the strategy and culture one, I think, was the one you had a question about. Was there anything else you had for that one? Thanks, Matt, for an interesting question here. So what AI implementations do you recommend is most essential or beneficial to gain efficiencies, improve learner outcomes? There's so many new technologies, or I would say implementations of AI that are coming out there, but I would probably start with the human and the human plus AI side of it. And we need to start really focusing on how are we going to enable the humans to be the humans in the human plus AI equation. So our perspective on this is that the future of the workforce really is human plus AI. AI is enabling, extending the capabilities of humans, being able to take up certain tasks, freeing the humans to be able to move into more critical roles that are human only, but I think it's really enabling the humans to be those is probably one of the biggest elements. So top topics folks talk about like skilling are like prompt engineering, but I really get back into how do we connect and collaborate with others in the age of AI? How do we bring critical thinking, ethical decision making? How do we creativity, curiosity? These are all the key questions that we would start to bring in there. So how do you have the right people, processes, and technology out there to enable that, but focusing on the human side of that? Brandon, great question. On your question was around budget. We traditionally have a static budget and then push to ensure we don't spend, we don't lose it. How do you convince people in such a budget culture to move to more flexible needs-based budget? I'll let Chris take that one.
It's
I'm a
a,
giver.
yeah, Brandon, that's a real challenge, right? It's an agile mindset to managing budget. And it's really difficult, but the key component to that is demonstrating from a learning function that you are aligned to what the business needs in the moment. And then it becomes a governance issue to say we have to have a way to reassess priorities throughout the year, periodically throughout the year, so that as the business shifts focus and the business needs shift, you have a collective way to evaluate where the spend has happened and where it needs to be shifted to manage those changing priorities. And the only way that can effectively happen is if from an operating model perspective, you are tightly aligned with the business, and from a strategy perspective, you are tightly aligned with what the business needs, and they see that you're geared up to deliver on that.
Just to add with them, and I think this is why a measurement strategy, a measurement approach is so important. So you can come to meet your stakeholders with evidence. Yeah. Evidence in there. So we're not just saying collecting only like learning metrics, but also how does the initiatives that you're investing in, how do they actually affect those most lagging business indicators, the less lagging business indicators? Like, we want to definitely increase revenue, decrease costs. We want to increase a safe culture, for example, all these outcomes. How do we know that what's in place, what's important to the business, being able to measure that? So you're not just coming with general vague assertions. You actually start from a point of evidence based in the argument. That's where I've seen it. But using their metrics, the way they measure the business, the way they talk about success, starting with their language, and then folding in the learning metrics, the experiential components as well into that bigger dimension. But I've seen a lot of success when you can actually present evidence using their metrics and their language to help them see the value around that. So the real challenge is, how do you kind of get that on an ongoing basis so you don't have to do this one time a year, look back to kind of gather all this data? You want to be able to have a plan that is not only sustainable, but it's actually flexible and organic. So you're getting ongoing data as you're going, building the case continuously. That gets to that more flexible identification of needs as they're emerging in the workplace. Lee asked, do you have any process templates to give leaders for them to communicate key information strategy? There's actually a couple of different tools, and we do have those within this offering as well, but we have a couple of tools or technology to help when it comes to implementing a strategy to help communicate that out, to kind of see how the organization is picking that up as well. So we do have a couple of those different tools that we have available, and it's part of the offering that we have in here.
I think one of the, there's one thing that strikes me about this question, Aaliyah, and I may be reading it wrong. So if I am, just let me know in the chat. But the way I read this is this representation or this notion that L&D is in receipt of their priorities from the business, right? They, again, being the business. And is there a best practice way for L&D to get that information and receive it from the business so it can be aligned and embedded throughout the organization? And I think the flip side of that is really, how can L&D become part of establishing those priorities in the moment? So it's not this task that the business sets strategy and then they have to remember to give it to either whether it's through talent management, it's through performance management, through the learning and development function, but it becomes this integration where L&D is there as part of the process, and whatever mechanism is used to create it and update it, they're always there as a part of it, resonating and helping to define how L&D is going to support the people side of those strategies. How are we going to support the enablement side of it? And so there are definitely ways to get that connection going. Yeah.
Yeah, I was, and I was just including there, Leah, too. If L&D is in the role of being an order taker, it can be very difficult to shift that to being a true business partner. And I would say that talking the language of the business, as Matt was saying, talking about the metrics that are important to them and demonstrating that business impact of investing in training, that can really advance the partnership role that you have with the business.
Yeah, I think that's why the alignment element is so critical and important. I mean, we've, been doing this for quite a while. And one of the challenges we've seen is that maybe an L&D organization may look really solid. Things are running well, but they're disconnected from where the business is, what they may need out of them. And that can actually happen, that actually you may be able to get critical trainings out on time. You may be able to pull data, but the question is, are you hitting the right things that are helping them grow, innovate, emerge, beyond this, or are you just, executing the basic functions? And it's an and conversation. You can't, not take care of the important, tactical daily details, but you also need to be there to help anticipate where the organization is going. What are the changes that they need to be to bring those solutions to the table with that? I think what's interesting is that, most CEOs or the C-suite would say that they feel that basically workforce enablement, the human side, the employees being able to do their jobs, whether it's related to skilling or having the tools or technology around them to do that, that is the utmost priority that they see out there. So I think it's a very strong case for L&D to be at the table. The question is, when we're there, what do we do with that time? How do we bring the data to support our decisions, help convey and connect with them on their terms? So thank you.
Presenters, we have a question that came through, that it's a good question. It says, if you're going through this process, do you have to do a deep dive into all 5 sections, areas?
Hmm.
I'm happy to
Yep.
answer.
Chris, jump in, we'll tag on.
Yeah. So great question. Do you have to dig into all of this? And I'm thinking back to maybe it was Aaliyah's question about eating, or Laura's question about how do you eat the elephant? And the way this, the way we recommend for an organization or learning development function to evaluate the health of it is, yes, take a broad look at all of this. I mean, Matt talked about this earlier, right? The connected nature of this is so important to understanding where things are connected and get a high level view about where things are not aligned. Now, that being said, you could take a deep dive into one area. It's not going to give you the best view of everything. And I liken this to when you go to the doctor and get your annual physical, right? The annual physical is designed to give you this high level view of the health of your entire system, your entire body. And from that, there are elements that either pop up as good or that pop up as need attention. And then a plan is developed to address where that attention is needed. But the physical itself helps to demonstrate how your blood pressure and your blood levels, all the other elements, that cholesterol levels, how they all play together to indicate overall health. And if all you did was go in and take a look at one of those elements, you may miss something else that's going on within the organization, right? Let's say you focused on the learning experience. Do we have the right portfolio out there? Okay. But if you don't have a look at what's the strategy that you're trying to support, how do you really know if you have the right portfolio alignment for what you're delivering back out to the business? So, long answer to say you can dig into one category, but the recommendation is look at it holistically at first, and then depending on what pops up there, you can then go and take a more informed look into the particular category that is of most concern to you. And as Matt said, it's designed in a way to be quick, relatively inexpensive in terms of effort and resources applied to dig into this, so that you can respond very quickly into an area that you need to. Matt, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it all. I think for me, we designed it so that it is sustainable to look at all the components so that it gets to all the elements. It's systemic. It's systematic, so it's a repeatable process, but it's also sustainable. We can do it. Then you can do your deep dives in each of those sections the way we did it. You can do just a focus section, but again, it's a way in which it allows you to give that big picture, and that gives you that overarching framework that can carry you forward to a 3 to 5 year plan. It gives you that consistency over time. So just hitting some of the keynotes you already hit again. So, but I appreciate the analogy. It's really on target. Well, are there any final questions? I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Any final questions from anybody out there? These have been really great questions, and we would love to extend the conversation with any of you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, connect with us, make sure that we can, if you get out there and you have any other follow-ups on a little more information about it, we'd be glad to kind of connect with anybody to talk more about it. We believe this is a really important, valuable component for any L&D organization, especially as they're facing a lot of the disruptions coming out. This will be critical whether you're looking at a merger and an acquisition, whether you're facing the adoption of AI, whether you're talking about a shift from towards an agile-driven organization. These are all large changes, and this can help you get a quick bead on where you are across the components and that alignment with that evolving strategy. So, but any questions out there? It's been great. Really appreciate you participating, throwing some great questions out there for us. Anything else? Like turn to the rest of the group. Chris or Peggy, any final thoughts or conclusions?
No, just appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, and great questions today. Hope we can connect on LinkedIn too.
Great. Thank you. So I will give you back a few minutes of your time, but it was an engaging and entertaining webinar. I want to thank all of our presenters today for such a great discussion. And of course, a big thank you to everybody who joined for your time and attention. I do ask at the end of the session, we have a brief survey. If you would take a minute to fill it out, we appreciate your feedback just to make us better. So we'll hope you'll join us again for another one of our upcoming webinars. Be sure to visit gpstrategies.com/webinars for our upcoming sessions. Again, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.